Welcome back. The film opens with Tom, also known as the in-and-out bandit, because he enters banks, robs them, and then flees so swiftly that no one recognizes him. He does not leave any trail. His notoriety has spread across the country after conducting 8 bank robberies in the preceding 6 years, and officials have failed to identify or catch him. Tom ultimately visits a storage facility and meets the booking receptionist, Annie. Tom is undeniably drawn to her, and she reciprocates, so they start a relationship. A year later, Tom shows interest in renting a house. He sneaks in through a window and opens the door for Annie to show her the place. He tells her they've been together for a year, and it's time to get married. He claims he brought her here to seek her advice on where they can prosper. Annie is pleased and decides to marry him. Tom then says he has something else to tell her that may surprise her, but Annie tells him to wait until another day because she is already overjoyed with the marriage proposal. Meanwhile, at the Charleston Hotel, Tom phones the FBI headquarters. He has been assigned to meet with Baker. Tom informs him that he is the in-and-out bandit and wants to surrender. He offers to surrender and return all the money he stole, down to the last dollar, in exchange for a reduced sentence of no more than 2 years in a correctional facility near Boston, with full visitation rights. When Baker questions why he is prepared to confess under such circumstances, Tom reveals that he found a lady he loves and wishes to spend the rest of his life with her without lying to her. They must first check his identity. Tom claims to be the true thief and wishes to surrender. Baker writes down his address and offers to send detectives to see him and investigate his claims. The next day, Baker informs Niens and Hall that another anonymous caller has claimed to be the in-and-out bandit. He shares all the details and sends them to the address to investigate further. The next day, Tom hears a knock on his door and thinks it's the cops, but when he answers it, he finds a maid. He tells her he doesn't need anything right now, leaves her a present, and closes the door. Tom, frustrated by the delay, calls the FBI again. Myers responds and asks about Baker. Tom tells him that he is the in-and-out bandit who called 2 days ago to confess, but no one has contacted him yet. Myers says agents have been assigned to examine the situation and that he will be contacted shortly. He ends the chat. Tom, dissatisfied, decides to go. Niens and Hall enter after he unlocks the door. They introduce themselves and enter to talk with him. Tom tries to convince them that he genuinely wants to turn himself in, but neither of them believes him. Niens tells him that they need proof first. Hall asks Tom to explain how he conducted the thefts and where the $9 million is so they will think he is the real thief. Tom adds that he gained entry to the banks via ventilation shafts and that all of his crimes occurred on Fridays, when no one would see him. He also used explosives to unlock most of the vaults. He wants comfort before disclosing the money's whereabouts. Hall refuses to do any transactions without compelling proof, so Tom gives them the key to a storage locker at Annie's work. He gives them the location and orders them to go there to confirm the money's existence. Only then will they believe him. Hall takes the key and tells him they will return once they've verified the information. They thank him and leave. After a while, Hall and Niens arrive at Tom's storage unit and are shocked to find the money in boxes amidst the junk. They carry all of the boxes into their vehicle. Niens chooses to keep the money rather than hand it to the cops, and he persuades Hall to help him. Niens persuades Hall that giving up the money would be counterproductive because it is a once-in-a-lifetime chance. Hall agrees and they put the containers onto the truck. Meanwhile, Annie observes what is happening through the security cameras and approaches them, asking whether they know Tom, the owner of the storage facility. Niens, apprehensive, informs her that they are Tom's pals and that he handed them the keys to some of his belongings. Annie believes them and returns to work, later deciding to visit Tom that evening. Later, Hall and Niens go to hide the money in a secret location. At the same time, Baker returns to his office and speaks with Myers, telling him that Tom called and asked about him. Baker knows that Hall and Niens have rejected down his request to meet Tom, so he resolves to go alone. At night, Hall and Niens return to Tom to notify him that the monies have been recovered. Tom accepts they have the papers and urges them to conduct the transaction he had planned. Niens pulls out 2 pistols, pointing one at Tom and hands him the other, directing him to commit suicide to make it appear like a suicide. Tom believes they aim to betray him and tells them that he anticipated this, and that the money discovered is only $3 million. He hoarded the remainder for his own protection. Just then, Baker arrives at Tom's room and knocks on the door, making Hall and Jens nervous as they don't know what to do. Jens orders Hall to open the door. When Baker arrives, he is shocked to discover Jens holding a pistol. When he asks why, Jens draws his revolver on Baker and kills him instantly. Tom attacks Jens and dives out the window beside him. Tom hits Jens, who drops to the ground. He later learns that Annie is standing beneath the hotel, observing everything. He snatches her, gets into his car, and drives off. Meanwhile, Hall and Jens get into their car and chase them. Later, Tom pulls over and escapes with Annie, hiding in another car in a nearby parking garage. When Hall and Jens find Tom's empty automobile, they think he is still alive since he has not yet departed. They search the garage but eventually give up and leave. At that point, Tom and Annie emerge from their hiding spot, steal a car, and escape. They reach a safe place, and Tom begins telling Annie everything. He confesses that he is the in-and-out bandit and that he wanted to turn himself in to leave his past behind and start a new life with her. He describes what happened at the hotel and assures her that he did not kill Baker and has never killed anyone. He also informs her that he has done nothing wrong since meeting her since he adores her. After they return to the automobile, Annie informs Tom that the company's security cameras caught Hall and Jens packing the boxes into their vehicle. Tom understands the idea and tells Annie that he will drop her off someplace close and that she must alert the authorities when he goes, stating that he forced her into the car as a prisoner, but she resisted and fled. He explains that if she doesn't do this, she will be implicated in the crime with him, as Hall and Jens will frame him for Baker's murder and no one will believe a thief like him. However, Annie refuses to follow his plan, and Tom reluctantly agrees. He promises her that he would take her to a bus station because she has to leave the city while he works to prove his innocence. Meanwhile, Myers visits the place where Baker was killed, terribly grieved by his death. He vows to hold the wrongdoer accountable. He confronts Hall and Jens about what occurred, but they swear Baker was dead when they returned to the hotel, and Tom assaulted them as soon as they walked into the room before departing with Annie. Later, Tom and Annie arrive at the bus terminal, and he asks Annie to call him when she arrives to let him know she's safe. Before boarding the bus, Annie tells Tom that she was willing to wait for him if they had accepted the deal he proposed. She is scared because she believes this will be the last time she sees him. She gives him the opportunity to accompany her, but he declines, explaining that he has to clean his name before he can live with her. He pledges to see her again, and they say farewell. The next day, Tom receives a phone call from Annie, informing him that she has chosen not to go and will assist him. She confesses she returned to work to acquire video footage of Hall and Jens placing the items into their car as evidence against them. Tom is concerned about her safety and advises her to leave as soon as possible before someone discovers her. He hangs up the phone and rushes to steal a car to get to her. After retrieving the footage, Hall and Jens arrive at the company. Jens goes inside and catches up to Annie before she can leave, locking the door behind them. He asks her about Tom, but Annie tries to evade his questions, claiming she knows nothing about him. He then asks whether she knows where Tom's remaining $6 million island. Before she can respond, he notices that the memory card holding the camera video is missing. Annie attempts to flee, but the door is locked. Jens hits her with a blow. Annie takes a pair of scissors and stabs him in the knee, but as she attempts to flee, Jens knocks her head into the desk, knocking her unconscious. Hall enters at this point, astonished at Annie's position on the ground. He checks her pulse and informs Jens she has died. Jens urges him to inspect her clothes because he fears she stole the memory card carrying the recording. But Hall insists that she doesn't have it and tells him they need to leave quickly. They both leave the scene. As time passes, Tom arrives at the company and finds Annie unconscious on the floor. He quickly takes her to the car and rushes her to the hospital, but he sees police officers there. He leaves Annie at the hospital and flees. On the same day, authorities get a radio communication suggesting Tom's whereabouts. At this point, Hall and Jens resolve to follow him. When they come, Tom collides with their car, and the two exchange gunfire until Tom runs. When he approaches, he runs into Myers and tries to flee, but Myers grabs his revolver and hunts him down. He follows Tom into a building where he is hiding, and when Tom discovers him, they fight. Tom knocks Myers' weapon from his grip, steals it, and threatens him, telling him not to move. Tom talks to him, explaining that he didn't kill Baker and recounts what really happened. He tells Myers that it was Nyen's who killed Baker and stole the money, framing him for the crime. He also describes how they assaulted Annie at work since she had recordings that may expose them. Myers begs Tom to surrender and promises to help him uncover the truth. But Tom refuses, throws the pistol away, and runs. That night, Nyen's and Hall pay Annie a visit at the hospital. Nyen's demands that Hall go inside and find a means to murder Annie because he previously lied to him, claiming she had died. However, Hall refuses, indicating that he does not want to be a part of any future atrocities. Nyen says Hall has already been implicated, so he decides to investigate himself and visits Annie's hospital room. However, he finds Myers in the room and quickly backs off, leaving. The next day, Hall senses something strange in his home. Feeling anxious, he grabs his gun and heads to his garage. Suddenly, Tom attacks him with a baseball bat, threatening to kill his family if he doesn't cooperate. Hall agrees, informing him that he has the memory card with the surveillance tape, which he concealed from Nyen's during their visit to the firm. He also informs Tom where Nyen's kept the money and that Annie must be relocated from the hospital since Nyen's plans to kill her. Tom rushes to the hospital and rescues Annie. They return to the motel where they spent their previous night. Tom and Annie arrive at Nyen's home 2 days later. Tom phones Nyen's and insists that he acknowledged to Baker's murder and received the money. When Nyen's refuses, Tom tells him to leave the home right now if he loves his life, for he has put bombs inside. Tom begins counting from 1 to 10, and when he reaches the last number, he presses a button on the remote, causing a massive explosion that destroys the entire house. Nyen's, on the other hand, had left the house before the explosion and fled in his car. Tom calls Nyen's again, offering him another chance to confess. When Nyen's refuses again and hangs up, he returns to the area where he hid the $3 million. He contacted Hall to explain what happened and invites him to the place where the money is concealed. Hall concurred. At the same time, Tom gives Annie the key to the storage unit containing the remaining funds, instructing her to go to Myers and inform him where the money is to demonstrate his good intentions. After a while, Hall arrives at the place where Nyen's is hiding. He knocks on the door, and when Nyen's opens it, he is shocked to see Tom entering with Hall holding a gun. Tom instructs Nyen's to lay down his weapon. Tom informs Nyen's that he has the memory card with the surveillance footage that Hall provided him. Nyen's realizes that Hall lied to him and accuses him of involvement in all of the crimes. But Hall reacts angrily, claiming that listening to Nyen's in the first place was his worst mistake and blaming him for all that has happened since. Nyen's assaults Hall and they fight. Nyen's takes the pistol and shoots Hall, killing him. He then attempts to point the rifle at Tom, but Tom hides and they exchange fire. Nyen's grabs the bags of money, escapes the house, and jumps into his car to flee. At that moment, Tom calls Nyen's, telling him he is tracking his movements because he planted a bomb under his car seat. The gadget is GPS-enabled and pressure-sensitive. If Nyen's moves the automobile or attempts to leave his seat, it detonates. Tom informs him that calling the bomb squad is the best way to save him. Tom shuts up the phone and approaches Hall's body, removing the shirt he was wearing to conceal Nyen's recording admissions. Meanwhile, the police, bomb squad, and Myers come to rescue Nyen's. However, the bomb expert learns that the device in the automobile is really a toy that will not explode. Nyen's is arrested, and his money is seized. That night, Myers returns to his office and finds an envelope with his name on it. Inside, he finds the recordings in which Nyen's confesses to all the crimes he committed. As he left the office, he observed Annie waiting to make sure he had heard the recordings. She suggests that he be tolerant in Tom's case. Later, Myers receives a call from Tom, who informs him that he wants to surrender for the final time under the same terms he asked earlier: 2 years in a correctional facility outside of Boston with full visiting privileges. Myers concurred. Tom moves in front of him, offering to accompany him. He bids Annie farewell and pledges to return so they may resume their lives together. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more thrilling movie reviews.